Team, the Baofeng radio has a little bit of mystique about it. As far as I can tell, there are 4 different types of relationships with it. You either love it,
Channel mode.
you hate it, you love to hate it, or you hate to love it. Let me know down in the comments which one you are. Is there anything worse than the Baofeng radio? That's what we're going to talk about today. Because it could be that it is better, but we'll see.
Welcome.
Introducing the Tidradio. It kind of sounds like Mrs. Baofeng, right? Didn't they almost sound the same? Well, there's more than just the voice that sounds the same, that is the same, if you will. But we're going to look at the Tidradio. This was sent in to me to look at and to review and to give. I mean, they probably wanted a sales pitch, but that's not what I'm going to do. Like, if you're looking for a channel, it's going to give you 3 links down in the description below to go shop. That's not what this is. If you want an honest review about something, I will be honest with you about my thoughts and my observations about this radio. There are some things that it gets right, and there are some things that it really and truly falls short at, and I want to bring these to your attention. We'll probably bounce back and forth between some of the good and the bad, and that way it's not all, one-sided. Although it's kind of all one-sided. So on first glance and first view, these radios are almost visually identical. It's like Tidradio. I don't know where these are actually manufactured. The company is out of California. And is that better than China? Is it any different than China? You tell me. But when you look at the keypads, they are they are like 90% identical. So the good thing about that is if you're used to using the Baofeng radio and you pick up the Tidradio, you're going to know how to use it pretty easy. It has all of the same basic features and functions, which I don't want to get into. Like, does it have a light? Like, okay. Can you listen to FM radio? Not if you're out in the country like me. You're not going to listen to FM radio at all. But the display on this thing is sharp. It's crisp. It's the one thing that it really has an advantage of. Is there only one thing? Maybe. But the display on this thing is super nice. You get a lot of information. You get to see different things that you just can't see on the display on a typical Baofeng radio. It is fully FCC compliant GMRS radio, which means that you can transmit and you can receive on FRS and GMRS frequencies. You can receive on VHF. So let's switch over to the B channel here. B channel, VHF. B channel, VHF. Team, this is normally the time where I would tell you to like and subscribe and share and leave a comment and all that stuff, but I'm not going to do that. But can you transmit? No, you can't. Why? Because, again, it is FCC compliant. So if you're one of those guys that loves the FCC and you want a GMRS, FRS radio that is FCC compliant because you love 3-letter agencies and all the restrictions that they put on your freedom and your liberty, then this might be the way to go. If you want to feel like a pirate, this might be the way to go. So how far are you going to transmit on one of these things? In vegetation, like I have here, I live in a forest. If there's no terrain features, like no hills, no spurs, no draws between you and somebody else, on flat ground through the vegetation, you might get 2 miles, right? Because it's FCC compliant, it's limited to 5 watts, which means on this radio, I don't have a meter, but it's probably going to be 3.5 to 4 watts that you're going to transmit out of here, which means 2 miles. If you're up on top of a hill, maybe it's going to be further. If there's a repeater within that 2 miles, maybe you can bounce out more than that, but don't get your hopes up. On an 8-watt Baofeng radio, you might get 2.5 miles, maybe. Like that little bit of difference in wattage shouldn't be a deal breaker. One of the things that I was really looking forward to this when I opened up the box is I saw the charging cable and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to be able to charge this thing by USB. Like, this is going to be fantastic. But upon closer inspection to the radio, that is not the case. And that's one of the downfalls. And that's one of the downfalls of the Baofeng. I wish that they would just let me stick in the cable straight to the radio. Like, add a couple extra grams to the radio to be able to do that. That'd be fine with me. But I, for one, am sick and tired of charging stations. But what did we get with this? You got it. We got another freaking charging station. The only difference is that the USB cable can plug into the charging station and then plug into a wall outlet. Big freaking whoop. Not a win. This is not a win for me. It's not a win for America. So where is this thing going to come in handy? Well, if you're camping, you're backpacking, maybe you're out doing some boondocking and you want to leave the camp to go fetch some water or drop the kids off at the pool or whatever, and you want to be able to communicate back to camp that's what you're doing. You're going to drop the kids off at the pool. Then this is fine for that, right? It's a walkie-talkie. And none of these are super expensive. In any place you go, if there's a radio and they're charging, $80, $100, and they're telling you 100 miles distance, 40 miles distance, I'll call BS on that all day long. But again, if you're a family and you want to be able to communicate with each other, maybe you're in a convoy and you want to call, you want something that's a little bit more, it's not really hands-free, but you don't have to hit different things. You can use these radios to stay in touch with your convoy. And out on an open road, you're going to get a lot more than just 2 miles like what I'm going to get here in the woods. If you're thinking tactically, you might be thinking that the Baofeng radio has some China spyware on it. China. And you probably right. But this is also a radio that I have no idea what's in it. I'm not an engineer. I don't know anything about attaching spyware pieces and bits to track or to do anything else. So take a gamble. In a contested environment, neither one is the right answer, but what I can tell you about both of them, and specifically for the Tidradio, is that its downfall of only being limited to 5 watts is also an advantage, because if somebody is listening a distance away, they're not going to be able to hear your transmission. So if you know how to communicate on a radio, maybe you have a keypad or another way of communicating without telling somebody that you're going to load up your AR-15 and conduct a security patrol, and you're going to SP at 06 and you're going to RP at 2100. If you have other ways to talk about things like this, then you can know that if somebody's outside of that 2 miles, that they're not going to be able to hear you. They can't pick up your frequency. Does that make sense? Again, I'm not telling you or advising you that handheld radios is the way to go that are unencrypted. If you want to step up your game, at least go DMR as opposed to analog, because you're going to cut out probably 90% of the users that are out there, and there's all kinds of radios, both handheld and base stations, that can do that for you. So overall, to be honest with you, I'm not super impressed with the Tidradio. I don't know if it's Tidradio or Tidradio, whatever. I'm not super impressed. That's just my 2 cents. That's my thoughts about this thing. I'll put it to use here at the CP, but I know that it can only do one thing, right? At the end of the day, this thing can only do one thing, and that's transmit on GMRS. Being able to receive means absolutely nothing to me. It's half the battle. You have to be able to transmit. But again, if you want to be an FCC guy because you love the FCC and every other three-letter agency, then maybe this is the one that you want to go with. Team, I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts and your comments down below about radios, about what you use, what you stay away from, how you employ them, what you think about FCC, what you think about FCC compliant radios, what you think about the Baofeng. But in my opinion, bottom line up front, the Tidradio falls way short of the Baofeng, and I'll leave it at that. Team, I appreciate you guys. Until then, you stay out there, you keep grinding, and you stay stoked.
Team, if you want to master your craft and develop your tactical virtue, make sure you subscribe to the channel and click that notification bell so that you can stay up to date on future content. Consider becoming a channel member. It's going to give you exclusive access to content not available to anybody else. I appreciate you guys. Until then, you stay out there, you keep grinding, and you stay stoked.